We're going to have all kinds of different folks join us.
Speak about solutions and why we're doing this moving forward.
I'm thinking about language of inclusion right now.
Unlocking potential, breaking barriers. Join us on the Talk Able podcast, where abilities shine. Now, here's our hosts.
And we are live. Welcome to Talk Able episode 2. Welcome, everybody. April, lift us off the ground.
Well, welcome to the Able Podcast. This podcast series will be to showcase innovation happening around disabilities and anything that can help in the world of disabilities. The role of caregivers is extremely important in the world of disabilities. Today, we'll be talking to a couple of caregivers, our own Chris and Mr. Solomon at the bottom there, to discuss proactive versus reactive self-care and the benefit of making sure the caregiver is getting time for themselves. A caregiver cares for the health and well-being of someone who needs to help with daily tasks and activities. The physical and emotional demands of caring for a loved one with a disability can be exhausting and can even lead to burnout. It's important to maintain your own health and well-being so you can provide the best possible care. Just so you know, I'm April Ramhit. I'm the Associate Merchant of the Breakfast Team and Market Division. I've been with the company for over 3.5 years and very excited to be in Able. I myself have mental health conditions and mobility issues, and I definitely am an advocate for those who need help. And this is Chris. Tell us about yourself, Chris.
Hey, my name is Chris Bailey. I'm the proud new store manager of Dominion Store 935. We call it the 260. It's a brand new nickname. I just put it on the place. But let me tell you something. The Able pillar means a lot to me because I'm a father of a child with a disability. And, I've seen a lot of different things. And when I saw this being part of Loblaw, I knew I had to jump on and have my, tell our story and share it with people and hopefully make a difference in some folks' lives as well. So there you go. It's Chris Bailey.
And as mentioned, we will be talking to Solomon Asmat and our own Chris Bailey, as they have someone that they have or are caregivers for and have their own unique experiences and journeys. Welcome, Solomon. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Solomon. I've been with the company since 2021. I work at Shoppers Drug Mart in the marketing department for OTC and health and community investments. So really happy to be here. I have a brother with a physical disability of muscular dystrophy. He's my eldest brother. I'm very happy to be part of Able at Loblaw, Able at Shoppers Drug Mart. We're doing important work and awareness, so happy to be here. And it's an important topic, so thanks for setting this up, April.
Oh, you're
and
very
Chris.
welcome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I wanted to start off with a job post that I saw. Though different clients may require different levels or care-specific tasks, key responsibilities and tasks for a caregiver can include maintaining a medication schedule and ensuring that they take them on time, helping clients with shopping, preparing meals according to dietary restrictions, performing necessary housekeeping and maintain a clean leave-in space, informing family and physicians about changes in the client's mental or physical health, performing basic first aid and emergency care during critical situations, providing friendship and emotional support to the individual. What do you guys think about that? That's a lot to have to handle for someone you don't know, but in your case, it's someone you do know.
That seems like a full-time job, April.
It is actually. It's
Yeah.
$22.33 an hour.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of people I know.
When you look at it from a resume perspective, that's a lot of work. Like if you're just someone who's on the outside, who's never done caregiving, and you walk in and all of a sudden you have to fill all these roles, I think it comes to a shock to the system to a lot of people who get in the field. So not only family members like ourselves who, we're going to care for people who are loved ones, but imagine someone who comes in blind, not knowing the job and having to start from scratch. It has to be an absolutely overwhelming task when you know that this individual can be completely dependent on you for almost every function in their life, for something as basic as shopping, just general hygiene care, different things like this. It can be scary for a lot of folks. And, we're going to get into it a little bit later in this conversation of how hard it can be and, the impact that some folks have as caregivers.
The one thing I wanted to add too is that, if you're walking into that situation, you also don't know the person. So personality plays a big role.
Huge.
And I think that, depending on how the person feels every single day, it could be different. They could be having a good day, they could be having a hard day. So being in tune with that is not always the easiest part of the job. Like, it's actually probably the hardest part, right? Because as a family member or as a caregiver, someone you can kind of feel them out and understand that. But as a worker, you're going into it a little bit blind. But over time, obviously, relationship does build, so it gets a little bit easier. But I still think that it's pretty difficult.
And I like what you said, Salman. Like the actual building that relationship is key, because it's this, you're in a position of extreme trust. This is something that you're not only in somebody's personal, like, finances or something like that, you're physically into their personal, like super into their personal space, more than any way you possibly imagine in some particular cases. You know what I mean? So you talk about responsibility, folks. I run a grocery store, but I'm telling you right now, a caregiver has much more responsibility from making sure that the produce is fresh, for example. It is a huge, and I cannot understate this huge opportunity.
I did want to add, for a while I was a caregiver. It was my full-time job. And, you talked about personality, Solomon. It is detrimental, because if the client doesn't like you, it's not a good scene. I actually did see that. I witnessed it. It wasn't with me, thankfully, but it was with another colleague, and the client hated her. Like, and unfortunately, these were extreme disabled people, extreme disabilities across the board. And when you need to, as you know, you have to kind of be up in their personal space, and that person doesn't like you, it's not going to work. And that she couldn't take care of her; someone else would have to do that. And I did notice that they actually talked about, and it's hilarious because I'm kind of an introvert myself. You wouldn't know it by me being on a podcast, but something that came up was part of the caregiver skill sets was communication and social skills, strong ethics, physical strength and stamina, reliability, patience and understanding, commitment to health and safety, and knowledge of dietary restrictions. And I found that amazing, because some of us might be put into a position where we don't have the best communication skills, but we need to communicate to someone in their way. So now you have to learn, like, almost like a different language. And I mean, if you're dealing with someone who doesn't understand what's happening to them, like Solomon, when he got the diagnosis, I can only imagine how devastating that was. So he's kind of in a mental state of not knowing what to do, and now having to rely on people to help him. How did that work out?
Yeah. So my brother had a progressive muscle. So it was more progressive. So as a child, he was able to run and function normally up until his early 20s, when he was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy. So since it was progressive, he was losing ability over time, to now where he's not even able to lift up his arm, right? So he's fully disabled. But you know what? We make him able. So it's as good as we can do it. I want to go back to kind of like the kind of caregiver as a job too, because my brother has really worked the system in the sense that, he has government funding to have people come to his home and help him get ready, put him to bed, and help him throughout the day, even take him to work. And there's been a lot of assistance with his workplace as well, to help compensate for part of that funding, and to bridge that gap where he needs it to be. But going back to the point of relationships, there's been a lot of times where he's built such tight connections with his caregivers. And these are young individuals through university, part-time job. They're getting up at 6 a.m., helping my brother get ready, take him to work, all sorts of stuff, coming in at 10 o'clock late at night, to put him to bed, or 9 to 10:30. And, they form these really tight bonds and relationships, but I think at a certain point in time, they need to start their full-time job. And I think that, the amount, even though it is a job, the amount of guilt that they probably feel in knowing that they have to kind of let go of that assistance and what that actually means for my brother. That's a really difficult, that's a difficult feeling. And that's really where us as a family kind of come in and kind of bridge that gap when needed. But it's not easy, right? Like, it's not easy on the caregiver, even if it is their job. So
Right.
yeah,
That's a good story. So in my situation, my daughter had cerebral palsy. It started as a learning disability and started to progress into some mobility issues. Now, I'm in a fortunate situation where the mobility issues, happen to be helped significantly through therapies and different things like physiotherapies and different things like that. It managed to work out. She was told when she was young she wouldn't be able to walk. She won't graduate like other kids. And I've said it before on the podcast. She's done both of those. She runs faster than her old man, but she still has some challenges. What I'll tell you. So, workplace when she started to work. So she has a job at another grocery store, and she had to have a worker with her to assist her. Now, another success story with my daughter, and I'm so proud of her, is that she's now able to function without a job coach, for example. And that is, a real satisfaction as a dad of 4 kids. Call me crazy, I know. But let me tell you something, just because somebody gives you that, I guess that label, you're disabled and you're this and you're going to be this, never ever look in a crystal ball, because there's somebody always going to be on the other side who might be able to rise up and have a different result. Now, what I will say, from our perspective, from a caregiver perspective, it's still a lot of work on a home level for different things. So, you know what I mean? Just because, she's able to operate there, it took a lot of work to get there. So extra help at home, extra work being able to just show someone how to prepare a meal for themselves. You know what I mean? Just being able to brush your hair. You wouldn't think that somebody wouldn't know how to brush your hair. But all these things, it's like we had to go through a full process of retraining or physically training her to do basics that, the normal person, or, person minus a disability, I should say, would have no issue with, you know what I mean? So it's a big training process, but through time, through effort, and through extra care, and it was a lot of care, trust me on that, she's come a long way. And it's a real thing that I wear with a badge of honor with my family. And my wife, if I was here, I'd give her a high five, because I'm telling you, the work that she has put in going, my kid is not going to be left behind. My kid is not going to be, taking opportunities away because of her disability. We've put a lot of effort into that as parents, and I'm glad to say that the results are amazing. But on the work end of it, I can see how a caregiver would have an extreme challenge, because it's a lot of effort to put into this. And if you're not willing to put in the work, the results are not going to be the same, is what I will say.
The most important thing that I just heard from you, Chris, that should not go unnoticed is, as a caregiver, you're also, the individual's cheerleader.
Yes.
How much do you think that really plays into it's your daughter, right? Yeah. Like, how much do you think it really plays into her success and her accomplishments?
This one's a tough one for me, because when you hear the words "can't do this" or "won't be able to do this," that sets fires in our belly. You know what I mean? You're like, we're gonna, maybe she may not be like other people, but she's gonna be the best that she can be, and we will, lift her up if she's down. If she doesn't have a friend, well, we're gonna be there for that campfire. You know what I mean? We're gonna be that person who's gonna support you, and as parents, we're not gonna let you fail. And that's a big part of this puzzle. And being a cheerleader for somebody, it doesn't matter if it's your friend and family, but having someone who's got your back, there's nothing more important than that. That's the trick behind being a successful caregiver, is caring, because that's in the name, caregiver, and being a cheerleader. And I love that you said that. That's exactly the success story that you need to be. You need to be someone's cheerleader.
Yeah.
What about you, Solomon? What's the experience been like with your brother?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I lived with my brother during university. I helped him as much as I could. Part of the reason was because I knew he couldn't do it himself. I think that there was a level of obligation in that. He was married. He had little children at the time. They're teenagers now, but they were growing up, so they had their hands full. And I think that I was put in a place where I was fortunate enough, and he was fortunate enough to have each other. I was living with him, so that was very fortunate. I didn't have to pay for rent. I was going to university, obviously bootstrapping it, and I think he needed help. So I think in that our situation was a little bit of a different one. I think we would have probably done that regardless, but I think it was a kind of a win-win situation. Did it get frustrating? Yes, absolutely it did. When there's times where you wanted to just hunker down and study or not be so tired. I was throughout university, he would be working in Liberty Village, and I would drive him with his van to Liberty Village and then go to Ted Rogers School of Management. Toronto Metropolitan University, so TMU. I would take the streetcar and then subway to university. So by the time I got to university, it would be like an hour and a half of a commute, hour and 45 minutes. It gets tiring. And I just thought, I had a really interesting conversation with them several years ago and be like, I wonder if I would have done better in school if I didn't have to do all that, and it kind of, and as I reflected on that, I was like, oh, that comment might actually have made him feel pretty bad, right? Like that could have made him feel guilty. And there's been a lot of situations in the sense of things I've said or maybe shouldn't have said and kind of reflected upon. But he said something really important. He said, if you wanted to just do it, if there's a way to do something, if you wanted to really do it, you would have figured out a way. Like dropping me off probably wouldn't have kind of held you back, which is 100% true. I think if you want to do it, you'll figure it out in any sort of way. I work at Shoppers Drug Mart, so I definitely did. So, I think I turned out okay. But I think it's about being right place at the right time. One thing I also wanted to kind of quickly talk about in terms of just understanding the individual you're caring about. As siblings, I was able to understand how his body moves. And I think as someone who comes into that role, it's really, really hard for them to really grasp that. And the difficult part is that they have different patients, right? So they have to now remember what to do for different patients. Whereas for us, we have to just take care of one person. And over time, it does become a little bit easier. And I think the hardest part is just the amount of help that someone may or may not need. So I think there's equal responsibility on the caregiver and the person that needs the help. And there has to be a lot of good communication in that relationship, which I'm fortunate to have.
I think you hit something on the money there that's important. Like when you get into it, especially if it's a loved one, you're better able to, I guess, predict the behaviors of the person that you know. So think about coming in blind and not knowing that somebody has difficulty, walking in a certain manner or holding a cup in a certain manner. You know what I mean? Sometimes you don't know everything that goes into, their disability, for example. So, you're sort of figuring things out along the way, and you're hoping that by goodness that, something doesn't go wrong in your care. And that's a lot of weight. Think about it. You're directly responsible for someone's well-being. And that is a tremendous responsibility.
I took care of an elderly woman who, poor lady, she was independent. She had just come back from her cruise and she slipped and fell on some ice and broke her hip. And she was in her 90s, had a heart attack, had a couple of strokes during the surgery. It was a mess. And the family found out about me and they asked me to please take care of their mother. And I'm like, okay. So I meet her and I'm like, wow, she's a little grouchy. I mean, I didn't say anything. She's a little grouchy. But if I were in that situation, I might be a little grouchy too, because she wasn't able to stand up by herself. She couldn't go to the bathroom by herself. She couldn't eat by herself. Like she couldn't do the things that she was used to doing now. And I had to get to know her. It took time. Like you two are dealing with family members. So her family actually had to have a sit down talk with me and say that her personality had changed, that this wasn't the woman that they knew either. And it actually happened a few weeks before she passed. She all of a sudden just became herself again.
Wow.
And it was weird. It was like this wonderful lady and kind and generous. And I loved, it was just like, oh man, I've been with you for 6 months. Where did this come from? Not knowing that her body was getting ready to pass. And it was very like you said, I had to know her body. I had to get to know her body. I had to know how she could pivot, how she could move based on where the injury was on her hip, and the food that she liked to eat. I had to know what she liked to eat because I was cooking for her every day,
Oh my
and
goodness.
I just happened to be a really good cook. And she had an old Betty Crocker um, cookbook from like the 1930s. Do you know how much fun I had going through that? I was like, wow. And I mean, I'm from Michigan, so Midwestern cooking is very hearty, very filling. And her family came over every night and had dinner with us. And it was really good experience. I mean, not her attitude, but I mean, getting to know someone so well and being able to take care of them so well. And that you said the care is there. You got to care about them. And I cared about her situation. I cared about what she went through. It was traumatic. And I understood why she had attitude against me. I was there when she didn't want me to be there. She
So,
needed me. She didn't want me.
so
Yeah.
that's a good point. You think about, so let's take the caregiver away from this conversation for a second. Let's talk about the individual who's accepting the care. So, sometimes there's a lot of embarrassment because, these folks at some point could have been super independent. They
Mhm.
couldn't have, they were, outwardly going. They may have been involved in, athletics. They could have been, a runner, all of a sudden the restrictions bring them to a point where now they can't do everything they normally did. And even basics are a struggle for these folks. So, there's a level of embarrassment there. There's a level of, hurt feelings. So by the time a caregiver comes in to deliver these responsibilities, these folks are not always the most accepting because,
Mhm.
they don't want to accept themselves that they can't do certain tasks anymore. And that's harmful mentally, as someone who's accepting the care, that I can no longer help myself. And there's a lot of healing that you have to do on your own to be able to accept someone to just give you that care. And that's one thing that I think goes missing in a lot of the equation is the person sitting in front of you is not just, a job or a family member. It's a person with feelings who all of a sudden are experiencing something they've never experienced before. And, they're relying on you and you alone to give them that assistance. And that's a lot. That's a lot on both sides of the coin.
It's a lot of trust.
A lot of trust.
One thing I did want to mention is, as people probably watch this, some might have someone that they have to take care of. But I think the one thing that everyone has to do, and everyone has, not maybe has to do, but that everyone has, is a parent, right? And I think as parents age, we all kind of go through it as caregivers in whatever degree that may be. And they also slow down. Their ability does slow down to a certain extent that I think, everything that we're really talking about does apply for them as well. And one thing, as we were also talking about it, is I think going through the situation that I've had, it's made me a compassionate person. And I honestly don't know or think that I would be as compassionate and empathetic to any sort of situation, any disability, mental health, whether it be physical health, anything that anyone's really dealing with. I don't think I would really truly understand it. And I think one of the realizations is that I don't need to understand it. I don't need to. I just need to be. I need to be compassionate in how I treat people, and really understand how I can be there for them to make their life a little bit easier, even if it is an inconvenience. I think knowing how much it would mean to them, whether they say it or whether they don't, that's really what matters. I think,
Mhm.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed.
I
So
think that's the biggest. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say
no,
that was the
no,
biggest thing about Able is being compassionate and empathetic. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't need to know the logistics of what's happening. You don't need to know everything behind it. You see the disability, or they've told you they have something, and now how do you act?
Hmm.
If they need help, you help them. You ask in a compassionate way. Did you need assistance? Or if they come to you because they trust you. And yeah, I've been on both sides of that coin, and it's hard to ask for help.
yeah, exactly right.
And
And I don't think there's any real playbook that is one size fits all. You know what I mean? I mean, you can write out a list of how can I be a great caregiver and go point for point. You know what I mean? But some of that may not work with a particular individual. You know what I mean?
Right.
So just because making soup in a certain way helps Sally, it may not help Bill. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's just
Yeah.
it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
you guys have brought up some really great points, and we've talked about caregiving kind of as a whole, like as far as like almost like a job, and it kind of is. But I mean, in your cases, Chris, it's a second job. You're a manager. You take care of store. You take care of everybody in that store.
Yeah.
And Solomon, I mean, you work for Shoppers Drug Mart, which is the largest pharmacy in Canada, and I mean that's a lot of care too. Making sure that your position is taken care of properly, and that, I mean, at the time you were in university studying to become your future self. I mean, now you've been added another full-time job, and not most people can handle two full-time jobs. And it's more than just a full-time job. It's someone you love, someone you watch that you need to support, you need to help, you need to do the things that they need to have. But what happens when one day you realize it's becoming too much? It's like, oh man, like, what am I supposed to do today? Because I'm so tired myself. And you realize, when's the last time you actually just sat down and like watched a movie just for yourself? Or maybe communicated with some friends and reached out and just had someone to talk to. I mean, what do you do to take care of you in a moment? I mean, let's just say you've let yourself burn out. What do you do at that point to say, I need to come out of this burnout?
You know, I think I don't know if I necessarily deal with that as much as I used to when I was living with my brother. Um, I think I think I had mentioned this a little bit earlier. I think that communication is really, really critical. And it's not even just about what you say, but it's about just reading that body language, right? There are certain times where my brother knew that I needed to just kind of go out and hang out with my friends or not be bothered. He was fortunate enough to have his wife who would also help him at the time, but I think it's about knowing when you absolutely need to step away and when you need to step in. There's been a lot of difficult, like because it's not we were fortunate enough to have the two caregivers in the house, right? So understanding that my sister-in-law is kind of over it, I have to kind of pick up that extra percentage of like a 30% to just kind of push on through for my brother. But I think the responsibility is also on the individual who needs the help in understanding that and really opening up. Of course, that's not always the easiest part, but that's where the caregiver's compassion really comes in, right? And just putting themselves in that situation and kind of being there for them.
I think in my case, my wife does the primary caregiving, I would say. So I'd say we're about a 70-30 split where I work full time. She's a stay-at-home mom who's juggling 4 kids, a side career she's trying to keep afloat. And I think just recognizing your partner's need, when that break is needed. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know when you walk in through the door and you go, oh boy, this is a day. I'm gonna take Kennedy and I'm gonna take hers. We're going for a bike ride. We're going for some ice cream or something, and you're gonna just remove the job of caregiver. I would say for out of that house for 4 or 5 hours, just to have that break, to look at your own 4 walls, to scroll through TikTok, whatever you like to do. But you know when your partner has hit that wall, and it's important to recognize that, especially when you're when you're trying to parent as best you can, but it's seeing each other and understanding. Okay, this is the wall, and we've hit it, so I need to jump in real fast and help out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I got to take my hat off to people who do it by themselves, single parents and different things like that, because when you don't have that ability to have a break, burnout can come real fast. So, what can you do to avoid that? You know what I mean? It's I guess finding things that you like within the framework of your job. So you know what I mean? Maybe it's, doing things that you enjoy along with the person you're giving care to. Maybe it's watching a show that you enjoy along with the person you're giving care to. Maybe it's a hobby or something like that. You know what I mean? So if you don't have the opportunity for a break, it's finding ways to, I guess, make the caregiver position something that you enjoy as well. You know what I mean? Make it part of your likes as well as the person. And it might open some doors for the person you're giving care to. They might not have been exposed to stuff that you find fun as well. So it's a double. It's a two-way street. But I know folks who don't have that ability to to be able to just reach out and incorporate something, and it feels just like you're in a box and you have nowhere to go, and that has to be challenging and difficult. So.
No, I get that. I wanted full disclosure. I really wanted my husband to be here today. He's had 2 courses of counseling, and one was specifically for caregiver burnout. And he had burnt out. He had I got really ill in 2016, and it almost felt like it's hard as the person, but I felt like I was another full-time job for him. My mental health had deteriorated, and I just was not me, and I was not working, and it was a really tough time for him to just be primary like all the time. As someone we've been together 20 years, and we are a great partnership, and all of a sudden I wasn't just his wife anymore. I was someone to take care of. And it was really rough seeing him go through that. Um, and he did mention that when he was in there, they did talk about certain things about him. Um, make sure you're eating okay. do,
Yeah.
do you remember to have your regular meals all the time? Are you drinking water? Just it seems like a very basic thing, but if you're not doing those things, it's not going to help you. Um, and he's diabetic, so his sugar was a little off.
Mm.
Ooh,
And
that's not helpful.
was he snacking properly? That was another thing. They wanted to make sure he was just doing these little tiny things that make a big difference in your everyday life. Getting a walk. I
Huge.
mean, how often do you just go take a walk with or without the person you're taking care of? I mean, Chris, that's awesome. I mean, Solomon, have you ever just had a moment at work where you're like, ah, and then I do. I actually have
Yeah.
the music playing all the time, and that was another thing. My husband and I are really big music people, but I have the music playing all the time. And when I have that stressful moment, I just listen to the song that's playing and get into it for a moment, or get up and walk around. Like
Yeah.
I try to
Gotcha.
get up every hour and walk around, just because it's you're at home. You don't think about getting up and walking around.
Mhm.
But I remember him telling me that was something that they told him is like, try to take a short break and just walk, and it clears your brain. It just does it by itself. You get all your thoughts out, you do all your wonderful things but this is like an everyday thing. This is something that you need to do every day, because if you don't, that burnout is going to happen. And these are just 2 little small things that he thought of. And he started reaching out to friends, communicating with others, not
Huge.
just me. And just having that social network that he needed. He's a social butterfly. Like, I'm the introvert, he's an extrovert 100%. And he was the guy that had like tons of friends, and it felt like he was in a bubble just taking care of one person. And I actually said one day, "Are you talking to your friends?" I thought of it. I don't even know if he talked about it in counseling yet. And he's like, "I'm not." And I'm like, "Talk to your friends.
Absolutely.
Share what you're going through. Share your struggles." What are you going to say, Salman?
Well, no, I was just gonna say, getting things off your chest is one of the biggest things. Sometimes it's not even to find a solution, but just to kind of be heard, whether it be through a therapist or whether it be through friends. I think that it's really, really important. And I think what you said really resonated too is, having that time for yourself. I think,
Huge.
again, going back to just maybe scheduling a 30 minutes, an hour, just to kind of be by yourself, do what you want, making sure that the person that you're caring for, taking care of, is taken care of before you do that, obviously. Making sure that they're aware that, you're going to be gone for about an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is, making sure that they're set up to be comfortable in their situation. And then doing what you have to do, whether it be, like you said, a walk or working out, whatever it may be, hanging out with friends. I think that's really good. And I think the benefit in sharing with friends is that they start understanding your life a little bit better. They'll start reaching out to you, and they'll actually help where they can, right? So it's been a really good, at least within my family and our family friends, it's been really, really nice because we hear a lot of things from our friends that they'll share with us that they've heard. Maybe another person has gone through this. They've found a worker or caregiver through like this network, or and then the community becomes a little bit larger, and it becomes a circle of trust and help, really. And I think that's the benefit of sharing what you're going through, right? And I think for anyone who's going through a situation where they're losing their abilities or having a difficult time, I think sharing is super, super important, and is only going to be of benefit to that person and the people that are around them.
That's a good point. Keeping those lines of communication open is critical, and that's from the person who's receiving the care as well. So that dialogue back and forth is super important. You may think something is working very well, it may not be, and then the other side as well. You know what I mean? That person may not be as receiving as they should be of this care. You know what I mean? So communication is huge. Feel free to talk to somebody. I like when you brought up therapists. Talk to somebody. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It doesn't have to be a professional. Your friend, just reach out. We're on a podcast. We have people we can talk to. We can share stories, share different ideas, concepts, how to do things better. Every day we got an opportunity to learn. And the best part of stuff like this, opportunities such as a podcast, the internet, different ways of communicating, it's also opened doors for folks with disabilities as well, because no longer are folks, bedridden or stuck in a house. Now they might be, within those four walls, but they can talk to the world. They can talk to their friends. They can communicate. They can make new friends. They can share ideas with other people in those situations. So sharing is super huge. Share the feelings. Share your bad day. Get that advice. You know what I mean? It's mega, mega important. But the biggest thing, and I think I love this because April wrote this in her notes, and it's give yourself credit. Pat yourself on the back. I did great today. I did great. Chris Bailey is a superstar. I did it. It's okay to say that. You know what I mean? Because let me tell you something. Sometimes there's nobody to give you credit. You might go through this job or this responsibility you might have, and nobody will ever say thank you. Sometimes it's the most thankless job, and it's okay to go, I had a good day today. I did well, and I'm going to treat myself to a such and such, a good meal, a good movie, a night out with friends. It's okay. Give yourself credit.
It kind of makes me think, whenever I have another brother as well, and whenever we're with my brother in a wheelchair, we're going along our day, or we're going to a wedding or whatnot, people will always come up to us and be like, "Oh, you've done so much. Oh, great job." And as much I'm like, well, what do you expect me to do? Obviously I'm gonna, it's my brother, obviously. But at the same time, it's still really important and nice to hear that people are recognizing that it is difficult. Not that I feel like that's what I need. I need that kind of I need that encouragement. But it's still nice to hear, right? It's still nice to kind of hear that. But at the end of the day, it'll never stop me from helping. So,
Solomon, it's an amazing point. Because there are some people who just don't have it in them to take care of a family member.
Right.
No.
It's not easy. I mean, first off, you are close. That
Mhm.
can make it really tough because they might be acting out in a way because, like you said, they're embarrassed or they don't like that they have to be taken care of. So they just start acting out and they're not being themselves. And you almost feel like you're being taken advantage of. And you start having those very negative thoughts and you're impatient. And then you
Sure.
start having an unfortunate like loss of appetite. You don't sleep, your concentration and memory start acting up because you're dealing with a very difficult situation. I mean, Solomon, it sounds like your brother was probably very appreciative.
Yeah, you know what? It's I'm laughing because we've had a lot of situations in where we've had a full on like verbal fight. And I think as brothers growing up, he's actually 8 years older than me. I was always his younger brother. Um it's easier for him to kind of like talk down to me, you know? And I think that complex or that kind of relationship made it a little bit difficult for us. But I was always his younger brother, so I always
Mhm.
kind of assumed the role of just being obedient and kind of like listening to him,
Yeah.
which to a certain extent helped, but then to a certain extent didn't. But as we kind of grew up a little, like over time, I think he started to understand that no, I'm like my own person. Like you got to
Yeah.
respect me as an individual, and that's not always necessarily easy to kind of come to terms with. So I think, yeah, we are definitely very close, but it hasn't always been like that. We've
Mhm.
traveled together, we've been to Barcelona, we've been to Turkey, places that are not equipped like Canada, right? Like they have
Mhm.
cobblestone, they have all sorts of things that we have to navigate. I've taken him onto the pilgrimage in Makkah, where you're sleeping in tents, and he was still able to a certain extent to kind of navigate, but I was still pushing him in the wheelchair and getting wheelchairs rammed in the back of my Achilles, right? Like, and it hurt. And so
Ouch.
these are all different scenarios that we've kind of been in, and we've fought, we've kind of become closer through those shared experiences. But I think at the end of the day, like we've kind of, I think what's really helped us is just being the fact that we're family, and knowing that we have each other's back in whichever way. I mean, for him, he's able to help me with a lot of different life situations. He's been married for longer than me. He's had kids. He's really well in his career. So getting that advice from him too has been really helpful. So I think, as I reflect upon it, I think all these life scenarios and the things that we've done together and experiences have really brought us closer. And like that's a full life experience. That's what
Yeah.
makes life unique, and that's the way I kind of try to look at it,
Mhm.
more of a positive rather than a negative.
Absolutely.
Um, and a lot of people have, I've as I kind of keep going, I've kind of always thought to myself, I don't really have that difficult of a life. Like I don't feel like there's been difficulty as I've navigated my life.
I feel that way
um
too. I
yeah,
feel that way too.
and I think it's because we have people around us that have a much harder time in navigating, and they
Mm.
push through, so it's almost like motivation for us, right, to make it, to do what we can and take advantage of it fully. um and I don't see taking care of my brother now as something that was difficult. I think it was easier with the right mindset, right, of knowing what I'm doing for him. So and I think the outcome has been really beautiful and really nice.
That was beautifully said. I
That
think
was
I think the
wow.
two of you, and like I said, I've had a caregiver background. There's that level of compassion and empathy that we learn, and it changes our mindset. It's like, oh, you know what? This is a privilege. It's almost a privilege to take care of someone
Yes.
in need because you get that opportunity to get to know them better. You get to help them succeed in things that they never thought they could succeed in. Your brother's doing things that I just didn't think he would be able to do.
Yeah.
And it's incredible that you guys are there for him. And Chris, all these
There,
accomplishments that your daughter's made, if they hadn't
there it
had your
is.
support.
There is. an overwhelming pride, almost a virtual middle finger to folks who have said you can't, you can't, you can't. Well, I'll tell you what, never say you can't, because that fuels fire under people. And I tell you what, the result when you get to the bottom of it, it may not look exactly like how other people do it, but people find ways. And I think it's important as a caregiver that we find ways to allow the person we're giving care to be their best and to achieve at their level. And once you lift somebody up, I'm telling you, it's a renewed energy. It's a lifestyle. So they may be going through some stuff. They may have some challenges, but when you lift them up to the point where I'm at my best and I never ever thought I was going to be able to do this or ever do this again, there is such accomplishment in that, and there's such pride in it. I can tell you right now. So.
You guys really seem to hit a lot of those challenges that caregivers have. I did want to mention one thing though, and I've been working with my husband on this. He felt like he had to take responsibility for the majority of the stuff. I was diagnosed with congestive heart failure in 2020, and my body deteriorated. It just did. Um, and I'm waiting still for cardiac rehab, but we'll get there one day. And I finally just said, "Can I just try and help?" And that was
Right.
really hard for him to let me, because he just thought he had to do it. And I'm like, "Oh, but there's no have to. You are being incredible and strong." I thank him every day for everything he does. But I know because I've done a lot of research that it's very important for someone to hear, "Thank you. I appreciate you." And then when you finally can say, let me try and help do this today. And then he can just take a breather. He can go on his phone for 5 minutes and not worry about one thing. And I feel like you guys talked about communication and how important it is to communicate with your friends and family. And when they want to help, let them. I
Yeah.
mean, there's nothing
Yes.
wrong with that. Just let them help. And I feel like there's that spoon theory. I don't know if you guys have heard of it before, that we're given so many spoons every morning, and each task takes so many spoons. And then all of a sudden you're out of spoons. What are you supposed to do? You're out. You have no
Yeah.
more. So find a way to balance your spoon outtake.
That's right.
It's
Good
nice to
point.
have a spoon at the end of the day, so you could actually maybe use the spoon for ice cream. Like, it's just
Mm.
it's trying
Straight
to
up.
find that balance. And I feel like you two gentlemen have found an incredible balance in your lives, your work balance, your someone when you're going to school, and finding a balance to take care of your brother. And Chris, I know your wife is, like you said, she's like the primary, but that doesn't matter. You're still there. And like I can't like tell you how much I love seeing people take care of their families. It's not easy. And I feel like you found a balance not to get burnt out. And the moment that it did, you did take care of yourself. So that's just so important. And
Huge.
and I, like I said, I've been watching my husband these past since 2015 deal with, watching me and taking care of my needs. And with mental illness, it's a little more difficult because it's not a physical issue, it's all in the mind. And I had shared with Chris that I my major depressive disorder, I will become really depressed within minutes. And if he's not watching, it could turn into a catastrophe. And so he's on high alert, and I feel for him. And I want to share that as someone who is being taken care of, that I do see these struggles. I do see that, there are days where he's having a hard day, and I do everything I can in my power to make it as better as I can. I'm a good cook. One day I'll cook for you guys.
All right,
And
we're holding you to that.
Yeah.
and I make him his favorite foods. If he says I want this, then I make it. And it is the one thing that I can do that I do well, and I want to make sure it's done right. So he's got a
Nice.
full belly all the time, and um, so I feel like as someone who is being taken care of, um, if I can give a message to someone who is being taken care of, don't forget to appreciate your caregiver. It's
Nice.
important. I'm sure you hear "Thank you, Daddy" all the time. And Solomon, I know your brother has said thank you, and just those moments where you're holding him, that's precious. And it's just I don't know. I just wanted to give my input on that. That as someone who has needed care, um, it is a precious thing for me to know I'm not alone. And you two have been there to show that they're not alone.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Well,
it's really well said, April, honestly.
it's wonderful.
And I think as a caregiver too, or as a brother, I think I've also kind of recognized, because brothers don't always say "I love you" to each other. It's just we don't do it. But I can now acutely understand through his eyes, through his facial expressions, how he feels. And I think we've gotten to a level where he doesn't need to say it, right? I can just sense it, I can feel it. And that might just be a brotherly connection. And I'm sure the same thing for you, Chris, with your wife or with your daughter or with your kids. I think understanding that is also really important for a caregiver, because it's sometimes you're not going to always get the thank you, but if you know that you made their life a little bit easier and you kind of sense that body language, that should kind of keep you going.
I agree.
And try to understand that too, right?
Well, I think we had a lot of important messages here today, and I think that I think we covered a lot of ground, and I think there's a lot of links, and there's going to be some links shared with this video of all kinds of areas that folks can go to for different aid. That'll be part of our links underneath this video as we go by. Selman, number one, thank you for helping us out today. Anything you'd like to plug or talk about here today, or anything that you'd like to?
Nothing specifically. I thank you for the conversation. It was it opened my heart, honestly, further. So thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me. I hope those who are watching can reflect on their own experiences. And you know what? We're just here to really make the place a little bit better. That's all. So if any little action matters.
Absolutely. Anything else, April?
I am just proud to be a part of this group. This was a really good conversation, and I want to say thank you on behalf of your family members. I know you work really hard in your everyday lives, and it's heartwarming. Thank you.
I think it's very important to get this message out here, and I'm glad to have spent this hour with you guys, and can't thank you enough. But this has been Talk Able, the one of the podcasts in the Pod Able community for the Able Pillar, and thanks for everybody for listening. We'll have more podcasts upcoming, and thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm Chris Bailey. This is April. This is Salman, and that has been Talk Able. Have a good day, everybody.